Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Jason Stapleton program, back for Friday, one more day. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you all for sharing the show. We love you. We appreciate you. We want you listening every single day. We do this show 3 days a week from sunny Southern California. With me, as always, is Matt. What's up, Matt?
What up?
We've been having a great pre-show today. I don't know if it was great. We talked for a long time on the pre-show.
It was fun.
That was good. So, and if you guys want to join, like I said, I'm doing my Q&A on Monday. That's a live Q&A to the people in our private Facebook group. Only $5 to join. JasonStapletonProgram.com/members. We'll get you in there. Had a lot of people signing up since Friday. And looking forward to having the rest of you join, too, before that Q&A. Now, the questions for this month are already out, so you have to wait until next month to get your questions in. But no time like the present. You don't want to have to wait. And Wednesday on the show, we didn't have time to get around to the discussion about oil prices and whether or not they were good or bad for an economy. And so I want to cover that today. We also have some stuff on the shutdown that may start to affect your life if things continue. I found it funny on Drudge today when I was looking around. They were talking about a doomsday scenario of what happened if the government continued to be shut down for an extended period of time, and the 500,000 people, the 300,000 people or so that they have working without pay. What would happen to them if that continued indefinitely? We now are in the longest shutdown in history, and if it proves anything to me, it's the importance of having competition. It's the importance of having multiple people who can do the same job. I think a lot of people are adamantly against government running anything. And they think that government shouldn't be in charge of anything and that it should all be private sector. I don't particularly have a problem with the government being in charge of anything as long as they're forced to compete in the same arena that their private counterpart folks are as well. So as long as they have to maintain efficiency and maintain quality and all of these other things, I don't see a real issue with it. And the problem that we have today and what we're experiencing with this government shutdown is a realization that the government has taken charge of things in our world, and they aren't allowing anybody else to compete in that arena. Through regulation, through taxation, they eliminate any private sector involvement in things like air traffic control, for example, which is one of the things that they're talking about now with this safety eroding. And so I want to come back to that and talk about it a little bit as the show takes form today. And then California pot taxes lagging illegal market, or lagging as the illegal market flourishes. We were talking a little bit in the pre-show about the Mary Jane, and I want to discuss this too as it relates to taxation and how when we can incentivize or de-incentivize certain activities based on what we tax people for. If we tax something, we de-incentivize it. If we subsidize something, we incentivize it. And so when we make things more expensive, we decrease the likelihood that people are going to buy that particular product. This is a basic, fundamental economic principle that you all need to understand, whether you're working in the private sector or the public sector, whether you work for somebody else or yourself. And what the government does when it taxes marijuana in the state of California, for example, is they make things 50% more expensive than they would be otherwise. So they've now done two things. They've de-incentivized people going and buying weed legally from a recognized vendor. They have decreased the likelihood that new vendors will come into the market because the costs associated with growing and the liabilities associated with growing that business are not worth it. And they have incentivized people to grow their own weed on their own and sell it on an illegal market because they can make more money with fewer obstacles and government regulation if they do it that way versus then doing it the legal way. And so we need to understand these principles of incentives and de-incentives to help us better understand how we can create a more prosperous and more, a world with more opportunity for all of us. And that only happens when we understand what motivates us as individuals, what drives us to make decisions. And I spent many, many years studying how this is done. and how psychology and influences affect people's decision making. So, for example, people don't always make the same decision twice. They won't. If you ask them, would you rather take $1 for free or risk $3? It depends largely on a variety of factors that oftentimes have nothing to do with the money itself. So people tend to go for the sure thing. So we tend to go for the safe bet rather than the risk. But if you have a lot of money, you might not care. I was watching, it was so funny, I was watching just briefly this morning because the news finished and I was watching a little bit of the local news and it rolled over to Let's Make a Deal. And they have the ball that they have what is essentially a big wheel that looks like the Wheel of Fortune wheel. And on each wheel there's the letter car spelled out 3 or 4 times. And there's a new car there for her to buy. And as she rolls the ball down the deal, the little plastic ball drops into either the C, the A, or the R box. And once her job is to spell out the word car. And if she can spell out the word car, then she gets to keep the car. But every time she rolls the ball, so the first time she rolls the ball, it hits the C. She says, great. And they flip the C over, and there's $400 there. Says, hey, you got $400. You can either keep the $400 or you can roll again. But all of the C's on the wheel are now gone. If you hit a C again, you're out, and you lose everything. So do you want to roll again? Well, now, logic dictates to us that we're looking at the car spelled out 4 times, right? So that means that there is 4 times 3 letters is 20 letters, right? 12. Thank you. I was thinking 4 times 5. That's why you're here.
You were doing 5.
So, I was doing 5 on my hand because I'm trying to figure out if I got to take off my shoes to do this math problem. And so you got 12 letters, right? Well, 3 of them just went away, leaving you with
9
letters, right? So there are now there's 4 C's.
4 of them would have gone away.
4 of them would have gone away, right? So there's 8 letters. So 4 have gone away.
Between the 2 of us, we'll figure this out.
That's right. So you have so you have 8 potential chances to win and 4 potential chances to lose. The odds are still in your favor. You could win a $20,000 car versus losing $400 essentially. So it makes sense to spin again. So of course she does. She rolls again. This time it hits the A. And so now they flip the A over. It's $1,000. So now she's got $1,400, but 8 of the letters have disappeared. And now she only has a 4 in 12 chance of winning. And he asks her, do you want to keep the $1,400? You just graduated from school. It goes a long way to pay off school bills. Or do you want to go for the car? Now, logic would dictate to one that you should stop right there. She's a college graduate. She got a degree. She got a doctoral or PhD in something. So she's not a dummy. I could quickly do the math just sitting there as an independent third party and say, no, don't roll again. Take the $1,400. That is statistically the best bet for you. She, of course, decides she's going to roll again, and she goes bonkers. She loses all of her money. The point is, if she had been on the other side of it, had I been the one rolling and she been the one as the casual observer, she likely would have made a very different choice. She would have made a different decision because she wouldn't have the emotion of the money versus the car staring in front of her and the lights from the show and everything like that. If she was given the option a second time as to what to do, that would also affect her decision, because her historical perspective would have modified what she believed about her odds of winning and the chances that she would walk away with any money. And so she might very well make a different choice. My point is, for a long time, folks who've studied economics thought that people acted rationally. And people thought in the markets that people acted rationally. What we know for a fact now is that all of us act irrationally. We make different decisions based on different inputs at different times of our lives. And one of the things that we have to understand as both entrepreneurs, business people, or just folks who are operating in society with other people is that people are always going to act irrationally. You are going to do it. I am going to do it. And the best thing that we can possibly do is know when we're acting irrationally. That's really the best we can do. Because all of you are going to make decisions based emotionally on how you feel and what you want. And then you will justify them logically. What you have to understand and keep in the back of your mind, and what I always try and keep in the back of my mind, is that's the way I operate. And so lots of times you will hear me joke about the fact that I decided to buy something or I went somewhere because that's what I really wanted to do, but here's the excuse I used in order to validate my desire to go and do these things. There are very few situations where we actually sit back as an independent third party, look at things from an objective third party view, and make independent, logical decisions. In fact, some of the guys that you will read and study will tell you that you just flat out can't do it because there's too much going on. There's too much subconsciously. There's too much history in what you've learned and what you've experienced for you to ever have a completely emotionally devoid decision. But the better we understand the influence at play in our economy, the better decisions we can make about how best to organize ourselves and what we can do to modify other people's behaviors. And so I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And then, shockingly enough, Socialist Sandy may soon be joining Maxine Waters on the influential House Financial Services Committee. Gregory Meeks, the lawmaker representing New York on the House panel that doles out committee assignments, says he plans to nominate the self-described Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for a spot on the committee after she requested it. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has asked for a committee spot her first year in Congress on the Financial Services Committee. This is a very powerful committee that Maxine Waters is now in charge of. Now, if it wasn't scary enough to have Maxine Waters in charge of this committee, now to have Ocasio-Cortez, why can't you just have one name? Cortez, I'm going to stop this right now. Now that Cortez is on this thing or potentially on this panel, it just creates a tidal wave. It creates a perfect storm of destruction. Because one of the ways that government ensures its relevancy, and one of the ways it ensures that none of us can ever operate without it, is through heavy regulation and the ability to modify and change that regulation at will. And when you put a couple of people who know absolutely nothing about commerce in charge of the Commerce Committee that makes rules and regulations regarding it, you're in big trouble. And considering Maxine was the same woman who said that we needed to nationalize the oil industry, and that Cortez is a self-described democratic socialist, this is not good news for any small business or large business out there. Now, the large businesses, of course, are more likely to be okay with this because they can always buy off Maxine Waters and Cortez. But for you small businesses, this will work to the detriment of you, I guarantee it. But let's start off talking about the oil issue. So, I should probably check and see who we got as our sponsors today. We got Indochino. Love Indochino. Guys, let me tell you something. You all need a nice suit. You do. I don't care whether you're going to a wedding or you're going to Easter Sunday or your daughter's graduation. Whatever it is, at some point you're going to need to look good. Maybe you just want to take that special somebody out for a dinner once in a while, and you want to do something that doesn't have a drive-through. And so you decide you want to put on your fancy suit. You go to the closet and you realize that what you have is an old brown suit from the 1970s or 80s, or something that was handed down to you that isn't tailored. Let's say it's even something that was tailored when you were in your 20s, and now you're in your late 30s and it's just not tailored anymore. You can't get the pants on. Well, you can go to the store, buy a regular suit, be disappointed in what you get, spend a lot of money to have it tailored and still have it not fit right. Or you can go to Indochino and you can take a look at their huge variety of fabrics, color patterns, and all of the other different variations that you can make. The size, the design, the measurements, all of that stuff goes into your custom-built suit. Essentially, you go to the website, you pick out the type of suit that you want, you pick out what type of lapels you want, you pick out the fabric, you pick out the cut, all of that. And then you take a couple of measurements, and in a few short weeks, Indochino sends you a beautiful custom-tailored suit that fits your body. Now, this week, my listeners can get any premium Indochino suit for just $359 at Indochino.com when entering Stapleton at checkout. That's 50% off the regular price of a made-to-measure premium suit. Plus, you get free shipping. That's Indochino.com, promo code Stapleton for any premium suit, just $359 and free shipping. An incredible deal on a premium made-to-measure suit. You're not going to be disappointed. There have been, I don't know, hundreds of people at this point who've listened to this show and gone and bought Indochino suits. I have not received one single negative comment about their suits from anybody.
I've never heard a negative comment about their suits from anyone ever. In any context.
Right. No, but definitely not from the people who bought them on this show. So go and get yourself a decent suit and a premium made-to-measure suit from Indochino and save a bunch of money. Just use my promo code Stapleton at checkout. So, talking about oil. So you see, politics, the first thing you need to understand is that everybody's vying for your vote. Either your vote in politics when it comes time to cast that vote or the vote of public opinion. And sometimes the vote in public opinion can be even more powerful than your vote at election time, because public opinion is what prevented Hart from hosting the Oscars and put his career on a downward spiral for something that he said 10 years ago from the stage. Public opinion has destroyed careers when somebody from some political group or from the Me Too movement decides that they're going to go on the attack. And many times these groups have absolutely no evidence to support, as was the case for, what was his name? The Supreme Court guy? Kavanaugh. In the case of Kavanaugh, no evidence whatsoever, just the voice of a couple of women who said that they'd been wronged. And he almost lost his judgeship because of that. And so the court of public opinion is just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the vote that you cast every 2 years or every 4 years or every 6 years. And so when they start talking about oil, one of the things that you will hear are dissenting voices from Washington and from the press. Keep in mind that the press, despite what they may say, is not objective. And so one of the things that you are hearing now is that low gas prices are dangerous for an economy. Because look at all of the people in the oil business who are being laid off because of these low gas prices. Now, why would low gas prices cause people in the oil industry to be laid off? Don't we always need oil? Well, the truth is, yes, we do always need oil, and there will always be a need to pump it out of the ground. But right now, we have somewhat of an oil glut. And as that oil glut continues, and as we start to see a slowdown in our economy, which it appears is happening now, you see a decrease in the price of oil. Now, oil does not get extracted out of the ground at one flat price. Depending on where you're going to extract the oil from, it requires different prices to get it out of the ground. So if you're taking it out of the deep sea drilling that they do on off the coast of Mexico or in the deep sea, it's going to be much more expensive than, say, in Saudi Arabia, where that's really pressurized oil, and all they got to do is put the hole in the ground and the oil comes out on its own. Likewise, if you're trying to drill shale oil, that is a lot more expensive than just drilling in New Mexico, where they can get the oil out of the ground at a relatively cheap price. So when you look at the cost of oil, extracting oil out of the ground, there are break-even prices. There are prices at which it no longer makes sense to pump oil out of these certain wells because it's so expensive to draw the oil out. And so as gas prices decline, those wells shut down. Now, an interesting side note, if you read the history of J.D. Rockefeller, which I highly suggest you do, there are 3 books that I recommend you read. Hang on, I'm logging back into my Facebook. So there are 3 books that I recommend you read if you're interested in like titans of industry. One is the biography on J.D. Rockefeller. There's also one on Andrew Carnegie that I highly suggest you read, and then there's also one on the Commodore Vanderbilt. Those three were amazing because Vanderbilt came up during really the tail end of the revolution, and so he knew people like Hamilton, and he knew, all of the Jefferson and all these different people. He was around the same time these guys were around. And then you move into a period of Andrew Carnegie and J.D. Rockefeller, who lived kind of during the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and who were titans of their industries at the time. And you gain a lot of insights into how capitalism worked back then versus how it works now, and what these men did in order to maintain superiority in their niches using both government and private sector means. And then also some of the things that they were wrongly accused of doing that, as history shines a light on it, you realize, hey, they really weren't as bad as everybody made them out to be. So one of the things that J.D. Rockefeller started doing when he started his oil empire was that he would go around and he would sell oil cheaper than anybody else, because he figured out that if he owned everything, the entire distribution line, he could cut his costs down. He would do things like go to the barrel makers, and he would say, okay, you're putting this barrel of oil together. How many drops of metal, what do you call it, drops of solder do you put around the ring of the barrel? And the guy would say, well, we use 14 solder drops to seal this barrel up. And he said, well, what if you use 13? And so they would go around, they try it with 13, and the barrel held together. And he said, well, what if you use 12? And he just had them keep doing that until the barrel stopped functioning. It started leaking. And then he said, okay, I think the thing was like 7 or 8 drops of solder was what held this barrel together. Well, when you're shipping tens of thousands or millions of barrels of oil, saving that kind of money on solder is a huge cost savings in the long run. And so he started to figure out how to do these things, and he was able to deliver oil cheaper than anybody else in the industry. And so what he would do was he would just simply drive the price of oil down because he could deliver it cheaper than anybody else. Well, as he started to drive the price of oil down, what happened? Well, all these people who were running inefficient businesses, or whom it was very costly to draw oil out of the ground, would end up going out of business. They'd go bankrupt. And of course, him running an effective and efficient business would go in and buy those oil companies up. And so now he owned all the drilling, he owned the transportation, which it was in cooperation with the train companies, and he owned a lot of the distribution as well. And so by owning all of that, he would simply go into these oil drillers who were substandard, and he would buy up their operation, and then he would shut their operation down. He would limit supply. But he was limiting supply not because he was trying to drive down the price of oil so he could get rid of his competition. He was shutting the oil wells down because he couldn't make a profit with them. And of course, what would happen? Well, that would limit supply, and then eventually the prices would start to rise, and all of a sudden it would become cost effective to run these other oil wells, and he would turn the wells back on. And so it wasn't that he was... Part of it, he understood, if I run the crux of it was this. He realized if I run a more efficient business, nobody can keep up with me. If I'm more efficient and I can deliver the same product at a cheaper price than any of my competition, I'll own my entire space. And every time one of these guys who ran an inefficient business went out of business and went bankrupt, he would be there to buy up their rights. That, of course, allowed him to largely monopolize the industry. But he never had a real monopoly like people think. He never had total control and could dictate the price of oil. The price of oil was dictated at the end of the day by the amount of supply and the demand that was present for that supply. And there were still other people who were operating and who had run efficient businesses the way he had. They just weren't as large as him. So you need to think about this when we start talking about supply and demand and the cost of getting oil out of the ground. It's no different today than it was at the turn of the century. It still takes a specific amount of money to operate a specific well. And when the price falls, there are certain people who no longer can operate their wells, and they just have to shut them down. And the people who are working those wells, of course, go out of business.
I want to highlight the benefit of what Rockefeller was doing, not to him, because obviously it was benefiting him, but the benefit to everyone else.
Yes.
Is he was ensuring that everyone else could get the cheapest possible oil.
Yep. And that's exactly where I'm going with it. So all of that lead up, you're right in line with what I'm thinking and where I'm taking this. So at the end of the day, what he was able to do was he was able to provide a premium product, a superior product at a cheaper price. At the very least, he was able to offer the same product at a cheaper price, which is stuff that people needed. Because at the same time he was building his oil empire, and he started out with lamp oil and things like that, and then moved over to over to converting to gasoline, so that because the automobile industry was coming up. At the same time that he was doing all of that, the economy was changing, allowing him to amass this fortune that he had for the remainder of his life. But the nice thing, the thing you have to remember is it's a two-sided coin. As oil prices fall, guess what else happens? You now, as the individual, have more dispensable income. And that's something that nobody ever wants to talk about, is that in economics, it's a matter of choices. It's how do we utilize scarce resources that have alternative uses. That's Thomas Sowell's definition, is economics is the study of scarce resources that have alternative uses. Well, labor is a scarce resource that has alternative uses. A guy can work on an oil rig or he can work on a farm. Depending on how many skill sets he has will determine what the options are for him if one industry goes down and another one starts to rise up. It's why I hound you guys about building your human capital, constantly working on your skill set, because the more you have, the more viable you are to the economy, to society as a whole. And the more insulated you are from the types of downturns that we see every 5-10 years in this country. So what happens when the price falls from $3 a gallon in gasoline to $1.80 or to $1.20 in gas? Well, guess what happens? There are some products that you have that you can't go without. Like you can't go without meat. You could try, but it's really difficult. It's actually more expensive than going with meat. So you have to have food. You have to have shelter, a roof over your head. And if you work at a job, you have to get to and from that job. So in many places, you have to pay for gas. It's not an option for you. So all you're doing is taking the money that you have earned and sending it to gasoline rather than to, say, an upgraded house or to a vacation or to a Netflix subscription or something else. And what happens when prices fall is that you are now allowed to reallocate your scarce resource and capital to another area other than gasoline or oil. Now, of course, this means that people in the oil industry are going to lose their jobs. That's true.
But the people that lose their jobs then are now people who are no longer generating positive value with what they're doing.
That's correct.
That's the very definition of it, is that if they were going to stay employed, it's because they're generating positive value.
But I guess what I'm getting at here, and I want you the listener to understand, is that this is not a drag on the economy. Okay, the fact that oil guys are going out of business and oil companies are going out of business doesn't mean that's a negative for the economy. It's not a negative. It's not a positive. What it means is you, the individual, are now allowed to reallocate your money in a different area.
So that loss is being offset by a gain
Correct,
elsewhere.
by gain somewhere else. Because one thing we know is that you're not saving that money. Nobody in America saves money.
And even if you did, it would still be a gain elsewhere.
It would still be a gain elsewhere. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter what you do with that capital. It's going to be a gain in another area.
Because if you save the money, then people increasing savings is just going to drive down interest rates.
That's correct. And it increases the flow of available capital for lending and other things. So there is a benefit to you to that money. That money is going somewhere. And the fact that it's not being forced to go to oil and it's able to go into another area of the economy simply means that other areas will flourish while oil prices go down and the oil market takes a hit and the oil industry takes a hit. So when they say it's both good and bad for the economy, that's an incredibly small-minded way of looking at it. The truth is it's not bad or good for the economy. It's
the economy.
Yeah, it's the economy. There is no net gain or loss in the redistribution and allocation of resources. It just simply it's going to option A. It's like saying, oh, the butter industry has been hurt, and therefore that's bad for the economy. No, they're making less butter. They're probably making more sour cream, or they might be using the milk for some other purpose. My point is that these are not positives or negatives. They're choices. It's not a sacrifice in one area. All we're doing is reallocating resources in a different area. And the truth is, which would you rather have? Would you rather be forced to allocate your resources into something that you really don't want? I mean, getting to and from work is something you have to do every day. The cost of doing that can vary greatly based on what it costs to fill up your tank with gas. Would you rather be spending your money on something that you have to do, or would you rather be spending it on something that you want to do? How would you like to be allocating your money? So the truth is, for you and I, lower gas prices are far better for us because we can now invest in things that we really enjoy or that we want to be investing in rather than seeing our money frittered away on necessity, I guess.
So people will highlight the negative impact that it has on those oil guys who are being laid off. But what that says is that they didn't predict that this was going to happen in the market. So they didn't have a good feel for their own industry. They didn't know that the current duties that they were performing were eventually there was going to be no demand for them in the future.
Right.
So if they had understood that and they had been in their side hustle, they would have been providing value in another way, then that just means that as the value that they're providing to the rest of the world is diminishing in this current industry, they need to reallocate their focus and their efforts to providing value in a different way. And so getting laid off, it's a bummer, but it also tells a story about what you've been doing with yourself.
Well, and more importantly, one of the things that I've always been a big proponent of, it might as well start. There's no wrong time to start a business. Oh, the economy is going down. What did Constance say in here the other day? She started her business right during the recession. That's actually when I started Trade Empowered, was in the middle of a heavy recession. And people are always coming around and go, do you really think this is the best time to start a business? I mean, look at this economy. It's like, yeah, look at it. Everybody's going out of business. That leaves a huge open door for me. For people who are running their businesses right, who are looking for, in her case, representation, that I can step into without the competition. My competition, half of it's gone away. Same thing in every industry. When a recession happens and value gets reallocated, when people go out of business, when their businesses shutter because they weren't efficient or because they weren't providing value to their customers enough to substantiate the price that they were charging, that's a golden opportunity for you to step in and crush it. I would prefer to start a business when the economy was hurting versus when it was thriving because, number one, I know I can survive. I know I've got something of value. And number two, I know I will never have less competition than when the economy is on the fritz. So there's never a bad time for you to start working on those other skills and start pursuing that kind of that life that you have always envisioned for yourself. Because I got to tell you, man, I don't know anybody who grew up and said, I want to, and forgive me for folks, maybe you really enjoy it, but I never knew anybody who grew up saying, you know what I want to do is I want to stock boxes at night at Home Depot. That's really like, my goal when I get out of high school is to go and work on a construction crew pouring concrete in Georgia in the summer. You know, I don't know anybody who says, I know people who say, look, I would love to work outside. I would love to work with my hands, but I don't know anybody who says, I want to toil and slave away for somebody else's benefit for minimal amount of money, long hours, and no appreciation for what I do. I don't know anybody like that. When I was growing up, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to, people want to be astronauts. All these big dreams that you have. And at some point, somebody took a giant dump on your dreams. And shame on whoever did that to you. Because it's criminal. They destroyed in you one of the most precious gifts that you've been given, and that is the ability to dream big. And at some point, you got a little bit of failure, and somebody was in your ear telling you what was possible, telling you to dumb down what your expectations were, because, you never been too good at, Jason, you never been too good at writing, Never been too good at that. Maybe you don't focus on running that. Man, Jason, you never went to college. Maybe you better not think about starting your own business. I mean, don't you need a business degree to do that? There are no shortage of people in this world who will tell you that stuff, and God, it just makes me so angry. My grandfather, God bless him, one of the things that he always did for me, and I don't even think he knew that he was doing it, but my grandfather, I had about 50 different ideas of what I wanted to do with my life between the ages of 6 and 30. And every single time I would switch careers and I would move into something different and I would tell him what I was doing, he would say, "That's incredible." He's like, you're going to be the best at that there ever was. And he was constantly giving me these little like nudges and he didn't ever say, "Well, if you're going to do that, you need to be the very best at it." He didn't ever do that. He just said, "I just see you being the number one real estate agent in the entire state." And he would plant that seed in my mind. And the only thing that he ever did, the only thing he ever said to me was each and every time I would move into a new industry, he would say, "One day you could own your own company doing that." He was always trying to get me focused on, look, you're not just going to be a real estate agent. You could own a brokerage house. Oh, you're not just going to be when I was working contracting overseas, he said, you could own the company one day. And I'm like, dude, that's $1 billion operation with all kinds of like government contracts. And I don't know the first thing about that, but he was always planting that seed. Oh, you're going to be amazing. And you could actually own a company that did that. He always wanted that in the back of my mind. Had an incredible impact on me later on in life when I realized what he was doing. But the number of people who will do that for you are few and far between. Most of them are people who are constantly telling you what isn't possible and how you ought to, really dumb down your goals and ambitions to meet their expectation of what your life is going to look like. And unfortunately, it has more that has more to do with them shortchanging themselves than anything else.
And they are potentially intimidated by the idea of someone else who's going out and doing that thing because they aren't. I think
a lot of times the people who, and this is when I'm in closed company, and I have said this publicly before, and I'm always cautious when I say it because I don't want to offend anybody, because most of the people who say that kind of stuff to us are friends and family, and they're doing it with the best of intentions. And the truth is, I think deep down inside, whether they want to admit it or not, they don't want you to succeed big because it will shine a light on their own mediocrity. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, Jason, that's kind of harsh." I just happen to believe that that's true. Even if that's not true.
Why else would you not want someone to succeed? Why else would you want to dump on their dreams?
Well, here's the reason why I think it is I think a lot of people, like if your mom is telling you, you got a good job right now and you got good benefits, and if you quit that job to start your own thing, how are you going to do that? That's really risky. It's not so much that she's worried that you're going to show her up. It has more to do with the fact that she's scared for you. She wants you to be safe and to have, to have those core food, shelter, and water provided for, and food, shelter, clothing. And she doesn't want you to get hurt. So I think a lot of times it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, they're worried about being shamed by your success. I think it has more to do with them. Hey, I tried that once. I really got hurt. That hurt prevented me from ever stepping out again, and for always taking the safe choice rather than taking the risk. My life turned out okay, so I would prefer to save you that pain that I felt and just have you choose the safe choice from the beginning. And guys, you got to fight that. You got to fight that like the plague. I mean, I say you got to fight like the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark as the rain's coming down. You got to fight like that. Against that. You have to push that's the majority of what you're going to get from people, and it's always with the best intentions. It really is. But you have to fight against it because it will destroy you. It'll destroy your ambition, it'll destroy your dreams. And man, if you don't have any dreams left, man, life is just bleak and miserable and sad. And that wasn't the way life was meant to be lived. Life was meant to be lived abundantly, with more than enough, more than you could have ever hoped for, more than you could spend, more free time than you know what to do with, following passions that you enjoy. I mean, envision for yourself a life like that. What would that look like? What would it feel like to wake up every day and just like, dude, I only get to work on things that I really like. I only get to work with people that I want to work with. I only get to do things that I want to do. And I make more money than anybody ever has a right to earn in this world. That to me is That to me is living. And nothing short of that is acceptable to me. And anybody who tells me that it isn't possible, I just point out the 8 or 10 or 15 people that I know that are doing it. Well, that guy's doing it, and that guy's doing it. That guy's no smarter than me. That guy's no better speaker than I am. That guy's, his product or service is no better than mine. So, yeah, it is possible. I just haven't quite figured it out yet. You have to constantly find yourself and surround yourself with people who are telling you that it is possible, who are showing you and demonstrating through their actions that it's possible. Short of that, you're living a less than life.
One of the greatest tweets I've ever seen was Naval Ravikant, the CEO of AngelList. He said the greatest superpower is the ability to change yourself. And ever since I've seen that, I read it almost every single day because it is absolutely wild that you can literally rewire your own brain. You can, if you don't know how to do something, you can learn how to do it. And like you look at another person and you're like, oh, they know how to do that thing and I don't know how to do that thing. So that's a part of my identity is I don't know how to do that thing.
Right.
You can learn how to do that thing and you will literally be a different person. All you have to do is teach yourself how to do that thing. And in the era of the internet, you can teach yourself how to do anything.
Yeah.
And then another great quote was from Fooled by Randomness, Nassim Taleb.
Yeah.
He said, the virtue of capitalism is that society can take advantage of people's greed rather than their benevolence. People's benevolence it'll come and go. Mm-hmm. But people's greed will always be there. People are greedy. You are greedy. So take your greediness and figure out a way to use it to provide value to people so they give you things.
Yeah, man, I want it all. I want the entire life. I want the private jets. I want the big houses, all over the world that I can travel to. I want I want to work on things and with projects with people that I love and appreciate and value. And I just the whole goal is, I want all that. How do I get it? I only get it by providing value to others.
Wealth creation is a positive-sum game.
That's right.
That's the biggest difference between business and politics. Politics is a zero-sum game. If one person is losing, it means someone else is winning. If one person is winning, the other person's losing. In business, it's necessarily positive-sum. For you to win, someone else has to win too.
That's correct.
So you have to figure out what you're the best at and how to use that to help other people win.
It's funny because I'm reading the trail of the comments in the private Facebook group for all you guys who are watching live. And it says, I can't see anybody's name on the service that I'm using here. It says, I'm finally in my life where I'm starting to actually visualize the future that I want. And it says, so true. I really try to be the cheerleader for everyone I know because I had all of that negativity growing up. And you'd be surprised how many people, especially if you grew up middle class. I mean, middle class, middle class folks are the folks who settled. Because I don't think anybody is middle class. Some people probably that's as far as they could go in terms of their intellect and their abilities. Man, they really stretched it and they hit middle America. But I think the vast majority of people who live in middle America are just people who decided that they were going to settle and that they are capable of far more. And I don't say that if you're living that kind of life, I'm not trying to shame you. I'm trying to tell you, I believe that you have more in you. I believe you're capable of more. I believe you're capable of living an extraordinary life, not an average one.
And it's easier to do now than it's ever been.
Yes, it is. And that's another important point, is that it's never been easier than it is today. It really hasn't. So, okay. Let me tell you about our other sponsors, and then we'll move on to some of this other stuff and finish out the show here. So let's talk about Quip. Guys, hang on. I'm looking at this. It says, please let me know if you didn't receive a Quip toothbrush. I'm like, no, I've had my Quip toothbrush for months and months and months. New Year means New Year's resolutions, and I've got one for you that's working. Got one you're working on twice every day. It's your oral health. And that's where a Quip electric toothbrush, sticking to good habits is simple. Start a healthy routine and sticking to it are two very different things. They're talking to people as though nobody brushes their teeth. Do you guys not brush your teeth? Like, I brush my teeth in the morning and at night.
I am not from Missouri.
No, you're not from Missouri. This was written directly to those of you living just east of the river. And I apologize to the rest of you who, engage in good oral health. The point is, how do you do it in a better way? A lot of people like the vibrating toothbrush bristles and they're trying to find a way, but lots of them are honky and they're not very good. And that's where Quip comes in. It's it's slim design. They'll send you new toothbrush heads every 3 months for like $5. It's a friendly reminder when it's time to refresh your toothbrush head, because I know a lot of you got that toothbrush in there that you haven't changed out since 2016, and the bristles are all folded sideways and it's all nasty. And you keep thinking, I should really spend $3 on a new toothbrush, and then you don't. This solves your whole problem, and you just go, Quip will send it to you right away. And that's why I love Quip. Over 1 million happy, healthy mouths do too. Get Quip toothbrush for just $25. Go to getquip.com/Stapleton right now, and you can get your first refill pack for free. That's your first refill pack at getquip.com/Stapleton. Really like these guys. And then, of course, we've been talking about human potential and your skill set. Skillshare has been a huge sponsor of this show. They've got an even better deal for you now. If this is the first time you're listening, they've got over 25,000 classes in design, business, and more. And you will discover countless ways to fuel your curiosity, your creativity, and your career. Take classes in everything from social media marketing to mobile photography, creative writing, illustration. Have you checked? Do they have any copywriting courses in there? Have you looked at that?
No.
I imagine they probably do, because they got 25,000 of them. There's got to be somebody in there who's teaching about copywriting. No matter what you want to learn about or what your interests are, look, it's a way for you to do it. And I'm going to here's the crazy thing. They're letting you do it for free. You can join the millions of students already learning from Skillshare today with a special offer just to my listeners, 2 months of Skillshare for free. That's right. All of my listeners, 2 months of unlimited access to over 25,000 classes for free. You have no excuse as to why you're not improving your own knowledge and skills. Go to Skillshare.com/Stapleton. Again, that's Skillshare.com/Stapleton to start your 2 months now. Skillshare.com/Stapleton.
There's some seriously high income skills that you could learn entirely in 2 months.
I know.
That, like, if you put your mind to it, if you worked on it, like all your free time is just focused on building this skill, you could drastically explode your income in just 2 months of work.
Well, my whole thing is I've been trying to learn more about Facebook advertising and how to track sales and conversions and all this stuff Facebook is just it's an endless resource for marketing and sales professionals who are trying to get a return on their advertising budget. They just make it as easy as possible to track everything, but how you do it is extremely complicated. What are you laughing about?
Peter Pooler's back.
What's up, Pooler?
He says Jason needs to use Skillshare and learn to style his hair better.
Dude, what? Dude, this guy, I tell you, this guy.
For those of you not watching, Jason's doing the Italian fingers.
Don't be jealous, man. Why you got to be hating? You come in here, you getting hating on me while we're in the private group. I got rid of all of you guys. Hang on, the video keeps cutting in and out. What is going on?
Must be Peter.
Peter. All right, that's it. It's got to be Peter. I got the hang on, I got the Wi-Fi set up and everything. I don't know what's going on with it. But, anyway, so we actually, this is the longest we've ever run this live stream video too. So I don't know what the deal is. So, do you know how to reset it?
I don't know.
Okay. Go and close the app and then reopen the app and see if it reconnects for us. And I'm going to continue on with the show. But, Peter, oh, there it is. It's back on again. You good? I think so. That looks good now. I don't know what's going on with it. We've got an internal Wi-Fi system set up here in the office to make this thing work. I'm getting ready to drop a truckload of money on some new pan-tilt zoom cameras and everything else we're going to need to do mobile interviews and videos. I got traffic and conversion later on this year in February that I'm going to be going down to. I'd like to interview some people who are down there. I've got friends who go every year, and they're very successful people, and I would love to get them into a room and comment. Peter, stop distracting the show. What did he say now?
He said maybe a course to set up webcams is in order as well.
Yeah. Maybe.
He's got your number right now, man.
He really does, dude. He's got me dialed in. He's got me. All right. See, this is the kind of stuff you could do if you're part of the private Facebook group. You could harass me while I'm doing the live show. All right. Moving right along. So let's talk about this California. We'll close out with the show today with this California pot tax. So right now, the Democrats are frustrated. Now, of course, Democrats run everything here in California, and they were expecting to bring in the last year. The state tax banked $355 million. That's what the government made off of taxing companies that sold marijuana legally in the state. They were expecting double that amount of money in taxes. Now, they always expect more than they get. And this is because they don't ever anticipate that people will adjust their habits based on the incentives that you put in front of them. So if you tell them, hey, listen, we're going to, what normally would cost you $10 is now going to cost you $15, eventually people will start to make different decisions, or there will be different options. So let's take somebody who decides they want to open up a marijuana shop here in Los Angeles. There's a few right around this area. MedMen is a big one here in California, and they've got lots of shops that are open up. And they opened them up a long time ago when they were just doing medical marijuana. So they had infrastructure and they had capitals going into it. But let's say that you're looking at starting your own marijuana operation here, and you see the opportunity and you want to get involved and open up a shop to compete with MedMen. Well, the first thing you're going to look at is what it costs you to acquire your product. What's the regulation? What's the amount of time that it takes to get licenses? And then what type of continuing, intrusion from government regulators is there to ensure that you're running an effective business that isn't screwing people over and that has got good product and all that. And then what are the taxes and fees associated with selling the product that you have? And you got to make a decision at that point as to whether or not it makes sense to open up that business. Now, the more regulation, the more costly and burdensome it is for you to open up that shop, the less likely you are to open it up. One of the things that they're talking about in this article is that a lot of cities don't have any kind of process with which to get approval for a new weed dispensary. Well, in that case, before the state law says you have to get local approval first before you can seek a license from the state in order to sell marijuana. So if the cities haven't done their job and they don't have a way for you to apply for a license or to apply for a grant to start your shop, then you can't even apply for a shop with the government. And so it's layers of bureaucracy on top of layers of bureaucracy that prevent people from getting into the industry. This, of course, cuts down on the total number of people selling. It increases the cost, right? Because if the guy down the street doesn't have any competition, he can raise his prices because somebody's got to drive, 20 minutes to another dispensary to get a cheaper deal. The taxes also are a huge inconvenience because they cut into profit margins. The amount of weed someone will buy will decrease relative to the amount of taxes they have to pay on that product. And again, we could replace weed with coffee or with toothbrushes or anything else. It really doesn't matter. We're just talking about marijuana because this is a previously illegal product that has now been legalized. And the reason they legalized it is because the government saw a massive opportunity to make a truckload of money. And they just thought, we'll just apply a massive sin tax to anybody who wants to buy weed legally by putting upwards of 50% tax on everything that you buy. Well, of course, think for a moment now. Think about all the barriers to entry into the free market that the government has created. They're requiring you first to go to your local municipality and get authorization. They're then asking you to apply to the state for a license. They're then going to have a mountain of regulation as to what you can do and where you can do it and when you can do it. And then they're going to apply a massive tax to anybody who buys anything from you. Or, option B, you could just grow a little weed, which is also legal, and sell it on what is essentially the black market. You can make just as much, you can make a whole lot more money doing that if you're doing it on a small scale than you could by opening up a shop. This, of course, allows the MedMen and the other big dispensaries that have been operating for years and years a leg up and keeps their competition down. So I imagine MedMen loves the fact that there's lots of regulation and that there's a lot more taxation to do it legally because it limits the amount of competition that they have. Now, they may prefer that the taxes were lower, but the fact is companies don't pay taxes. Companies pass taxes along to the consumer. So these guys really don't care because their competition is limited. And if you want legal weed, you have to go to somebody like them or the few other vendors that are available, the few other small shops that are available who have actually taken the time to go through the process to do it legally. That's why nobody's opening up new weed shops. It's why you're not seeing an explosion in the industry the way everybody anticipated, is because the government has done everything that they can to limit the number of people who will legally get into this business. And then, of course, they're now upset that there is a huge black market for this product. And when we say black market, we don't mean drug dealers and things like that in the traditional sense. We just mean guys who, because now it's legal. You could grow it in your backyard if you wanted to. So they're growing it in their backyard and then selling it to their neighbors, and their neighbor saves money, doesn't have to worry about going down and, getting their card swiped and all that stuff. They just give the guy $20 and they got their weed. So we can learn a lot from this in terms of incentives and de-incentives in the private sector. And the truth is, if the government would reduce the tax burden, reduce the regulatory headache, they would have a whole lot more people opening up shops to sell weed. In addition, they would decrease the price that everybody had to pay because more competition leads to more price competition. And they would eventually and likely make a lot more money in terms of the taxes that they pay or that they're paid, because there will be more people selling more weed legally and fewer people selling it quote unquote illegally. But for some reason, this always escapes government. It's like when you get a lobotomy when you go to government, and I think it's because most of them have never operated in the private sector. Most of them have no concept of the way supply and demand forces work. Now, I say that, but then there are times when they do seem to realize it because they talk about how damaging it is for this piece of regulation or that piece of taxation and how it's hampering business growth. So they seem to understand it when it benefits them, and they seem to be aloof to it any other time.
Well, you just said that, for example, MedMen, they like having these regulations because the thing that they're selling, they don't have a lot of competition for it.
They likely do.
Yeah. So the thing that the state is selling here is access to this product. So they don't have any competition in managing access to that product. So they're acting the way that a company without any competition would act.
That's right. Yeah.
They're overcharging for their service.
And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you raise your prices if you knew, hey, because this is the way it works. I mean, I've done this many times in my business. We sell a product for $1,000 and the product sells. And I say, okay, what happens if we charge $2,000 for the product? So we charge $2,000 and we make the same amount, if not more money. And I say, well, okay, what happens if we sell $3,000 for this product? What about $4,000? We just keep cranking up the price until we hit a wall where, okay, this is too expensive. Now we're actually losing. We're not increasing the amount of money we make. We're losing money because we've increased the price of our product too far. In the absence of any competition, why would you not charge more? The only downside is that somebody's going to go to the illegal market rather than to the legal market to buy direct from you. But they're incentivized to raise their prices. That's what they should be doing if they don't have any competition. The government's job really is to create the even playing field for everyone. The goal is that the rules are the same for everyone, and that is as easy as possible for people to start businesses. What you want is the maximum amount of competition that a particular industry can support, and that fluctuates based on the availability of supply, based on the number of people who have opened businesses, the ones who are running them efficiently, the demand for the product, how much competition is actually needed in a specific industry is all relative. But what the government fails to do is they fail to understand that by doing it the way they're doing it, and it's always for your benefit. Okay, we need the regulation to ensure that only quality product is being sold from these vendors. And we need the regulation to ensure that, that we can manage this. We need the taxation to make sure that we have the capacity to manage all of this.
Which is crazy, because imagine a weed company that was selling inferior weed that was making you sick or poisoning you or just was bad.
Oh, I know.
That company's not going to stay in business.
Exactly.
We've already seen people will go other alternative routes to get whatever they're looking for.
Not only that, but even that's right. So what happens is the free market tends to solve this problem on its own. And you can take, for example, think about the FDA and all of the regulation and tape that they go through in order to prevent, say, salmonella from getting into the lettuce that you eat. And we just had a huge outbreak of what was it? E. coli in the romaine lettuce that went all over the country. It's like, where were you, FDA? I mean, the truth is, these things happen no matter how much regulation you have. And the fact is, once you identify where it came from, nobody's going to buy from those people again. At least not if they're smart. If they buy a second time and it happens, it's all over after that. And so the liability to these companies for selling a bad product that makes people sick or that kills people is so overwhelming. You go back to that book, Skin in the Game. These guys have all the skin in the game to ensure that they're putting out a quality product for people to buy. In the absence of that, they're not going to be around very long. Either that or everybody's going to know that they got ditchweed and they'll have to sell it at ditchweed prices to get anybody to buy it. And at that point, that's okay too.
The FDA has no skin in the game because they don't bear the consequences of their action or inaction.
No, and
if anything, they get a bigger budget.
And it turns out you are the one who is harmed. The consumer is the one who's harmed by the FDA choosing to regulate the way it does.
Because now there's the ostensible presence of regulation that's actually just bad regulation. So people think that there's a better standard than there actually is.
Correct. Yeah,
so they
absolutely
behave as if there is a better standard. So it's not just that it's an inconvenience, it's an active present harm.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. And so we have to consider cause and effect of what's going to happen when we subsidize something, when we tax something, when we regulate. What are the negative downsides? Because government will never consider that, but the free market will. And you need to consider it when you're making decisions about how to invest in your business, because you have to consider what are the costs associated with making a change, offering a discount versus raising my prices. How is my audience, how are my buyers going to respond to that? And is that something that I want? Is that going to have a positive or negative impact? And whenever we test, we're always looking for that. Whenever we tweak an we tweak an offer, or we tweak something that we do on the show, what we're looking for is what type of feedback are we getting? Positive, negative, we see our numbers go up. What if we tweak a headline and we say something a little different way? What if we're more aggressive with our headline versus less aggressive? What happens if we start adding show numbers to the show rather than just having the title? Does it make it easier to search? Do we see overall numbers tick up? All of these things are things that we're doing to try and modify behavior. Everything that we do in business is about delivering quality product to people and then trying to modify behavior to get them to do what we want, which is ultimately to buy our stuff. So we do that through superior product, and then we also do it through superior marketing and advertising. Now, interesting enough, I don't have time to cover it today, but I am going to cover it in a special video that will be on my fan page. It's facebook.com/Jason Stapleton fan. If you want to go there, it'll be out either this weekend or next week. But it turns out a guy ended up opening up a London restaurant, and it went to the top of TripAdvisor. But the thing is, there wasn't a real restaurant there. He had fake reviews, he had fake people talking about it, and he was able to generate one of the most sought after, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the entire city that nobody had been to. There's an incredible amount of value here in understanding what he did and how he did it. And I want to talk to you guys about that, but I'm not going to do it on the show. I'm going to do it in a video that I'm going to put out on my fan page. So if you're not a member of the fan page, it's Jason Stapleton Fan on Facebook. Go there and follow the fan page so you get all the information. I just put out a great video earlier today on headlines and how to kind of hack headlines specifically for podcasters. And there's a PDF for you to download and everything, and that's only available on the fan page. So go check that out. But that's going to do it for the show today. Guys, listen, if you like the show, I need you to do a few things for me, okay? First of all, just download and listen to the show. We do it 3 days a week. It's 3 hours a week. I guarantee you, if you listen to it, it's going to inspire, it's going to educate you, it's going to enlighten you, and it's going to leave you feeling better about yourself and about the world around you. And I would just love for you to download and subscribe and listen to the show every single day. The second thing I'd ask you to do is share the show with somebody. Somebody needs to hear this message. There's somebody out there who's hurting, somebody out there who needs to know this information, and go out and share it with them. And then last but not least, if you love this show, if you like the new direction, I need you to do me a favor. Go to iTunes, leave me a rating and review, 5 stars if you think the show is worth it. And if you will do all 3 of those things, I promise you, we'll be back here on Monday to do it all over again. Until then, be safe, be good. I'll talk to you then.